this and go, whoa, and be like, hi, everybody, this is Chris Schmidt. Welcome to another Ask GSG. We are live, and I'm going to shrink down here in the corner. We're going to jump on into the chat, and I got a question from Tutengua, something, I don't know. Bad pronunciation's one of my things, so we're just going to go with that. But he linked to this video from Dmitry Zakharov. This project is based on 3D scan, allows me to produce my own body's 3D object. Lots of details. There's some cool music, but like the main thing here is we get lots of really cool textury visuals. So clearly he's saying that this is probably the camera inside of the body, the render of a body scan. So let's see what we can do. Nick actually was asked about this very one, and then he tried tackling it one way, but I had some ideas of some different ways of tackling it. So let's see what we can do. Actually, one part of it, I really liked what Nick had done, and maybe we can even do that for that bit, but then we can maybe start adding on top of that as well. So what Nick did is he searched for, let's go to images, and let's search for Vegas. So we're going to search for Vegas, and I think Nick even did this exactly. So I'm going to go to Search Tools. I'm going to go to Usage Rights, labeled for reuse with modification. Cool. So here's one. So whatever. I just need a picture with like lots of crazy colors. I'm going to view image. We're going to modify the heck out of this thing. You'll never be able to tell, but let's go ahead and grab this. I'm going to take this picture. I'm going to open it up in Photoshop. Neat. And what are we going to do? We are going to, I think we can actually do it in a similar way to what Nick did. For this part, anyway, is we'll grab, let's make a rectangle marquee. I'm going to grab that. And what we're going to do is we're going to stretch it. We're going to stretch it wide. Now, I do think we still want variation. We want variation in the color, but let's see, how do we do this? I'm going to crop the file. Let's make that, I'm going to acknowledge that, hit enter, hit the letter C for crop, and that's actually cropping to the selection, which is great. I'm going to crop to that. So you got like lots of blue up there. I think actually I'm going to hit C for crop again and pull it down so it's not quite so much on the top. So we're getting something like that. In fact, I can potentially even hit crop again, and let's crop out that little black bar on the bottom. So we're getting all those kind of crazy colors there. I'm going to stretch this image even wider. So let's make it image size. Width, don't link. I want my image width to be twice as much. So it's going to be super wide now, super stretched out. And I think I want some horizontal blur. So I'm going to go to blur and I'll do, which one is it? Motion blur? Okay, motion blur, and it's already horizontal by default. So I can start cranking that up actually probably quite a bit. Not all the way, but enough where like it's really getting super streaked. Nice and streaky all the way across, so kind of get rid of those goofy pixels. So that's actually looking pretty good. I like that a lot. All we need to do is make this tileable, which I think is a super important part of this. So let's talk about making something tileable. I'm going to actually select this entire image, copy it. I'm going to go to Filter, Other, Offset, and I want to offset it by whatever amount. We could, I guess the best is about halfway. So go about halfway there, and I want it to go also offset here, although that is kind of blending in well enough where you don't even see the tile, but whatever. Okay, cool. We did that. So now we've offset it. Now what offsetting means is now the top matches the bottom and the left matches the right. And what we did is we took those edges that didn't used to match and we moved them into the middle. So what that means is I can now paste in our original image, and honestly, I guess let's do it as a mask so we can do it a little bit interactively. I'm going to grab this middle section and I'm going to mask it. So that becomes a nice mask. So that's no good. But if we start blurring this mask, so if I select our little mask right there, which is very, very scrunched down because of our long image, but we can now start blurring that. So I can say blur mask, and you'll see as I start blurring it, that our edges are getting, we got to be careful about how far we go, because if I go too far, we're going to get to the center point and lose it. But the point being is I've now, if I hit OK, and we're actually going to want to probably make that bigger, so I'm going to zoom out. I'm just going to guess here. So we got, actually, if you hold down Alt, if I hold down Alt, you can actually see what I've got right there. So here's our mask. Hold down Alt, click on your mask. You can now become the mask layer. I'm going to grab that selection, hit V, and then hold down Alt, and then stretch this out so we kind of get a longer transition. And now I'm going to click back on our regular image. And now you see what we've actually done is transitioned into this mask layer and then back out again, which is effectively hiding our seam. So, and I don't mind this color variation. We actually kind of want that color variation. So what this effectively should mean is if I bake that down, then now we've got an image that should be tileable in the most basic way. But so what that means, if I go to offset again and I say offset, as I drag my horizontal, tell me where that ends. Like there's no end to it anymore. Now vertically, I think there technically would be a hard pixel line, but I didn't care about that because it's all so very horizontal that we can't see it anyway. So I can just hit OK, whatever, it's like whatever layer is fine. So cool, now we've got our stripe, and it's a tileable stripe. Let's jump into our, let's save this texture. So I'm going to make a new folder, and we're going to call it, I don't even know what to call it. Let's call it, texture stripes. Boring, but descriptive. Texture stripes, and we'll just name this stripe. Cool, and this is just a JPEG, nothing terribly fancy. So now let's jump into our content browser in Cinema 4D. We're going to go to our sculpting tools. We're going to go into our base meshes, and we're going to pick an animal. Nick always uses the elephant, but so I try not to use the elephant, but honestly I think the elephant's going to be the best one to do in this case because the inside of an elephant is crazy looking. So we are now inside of an elephant. There's his tail. There's lots of weirdnesses. So it's hard to stay inside of a model. So like if we were to go over here, it's going to start looking pretty interesting. Let's go and get rid of his... Actually, let's keep the eyes. Why not? It's weird. I'm going to create a subdivision surface and throw the whole thing in there. So now it's nice and smooth. And now, honestly, it's going to be things like zooming in on very specific areas. So we can go, like zoom in over here and get some, like that's a nice kind of weird abstract-y angled thing. Kill that material, and let's make our own new one. And actually, if we look at a reference, I'm curious if there's a lot of reflection. It's hard to tell. There does seem to be some reflection. So, okay, so in here, I'm going to turn on the luminance channel, and we're going to throw in that image. Actually, yeah, we'll just start by throwing in that image. So right away, before we even do that, why don't we go save this file? We'll just name this Stripes, the C4D file. Add in the image, which is in here, in there. I should put it in that texture folder, but it's still fine. Cool. Now let's apply it to our elephant. Boom. I'm going to hit NA, and now it's changed in my view mode so I can actually see it. Right now it's set to UV mapping. We're going to set it to, I guess, actually flat. We're going to set to flat, and if I change this, you can actually see that here is the material. Like it's a flat projected. I guess I'll create a camera and now we can go outside of it. We've got this flat projection, and that means I can start rotating this to like weird angles, which I think is what we want, but it's going to be kind of infinite. And in fact, it's supposed to be really long, so let's do that. Whee! Okay, cool. Now we got stripey elephant. So now let's go back inside. And now I think we're going to want overall at these different in the reference, like sometimes really dark, sometimes it's not. I'm going to generate that, and we can change the colors, in fact, as well, kind of parametrically, so we get a lot of control over this. So we can go into our, I'm going to put it into a layer. So now we're in a layer, and now I'm going to make a noise. Cool, so we have a noise. I'm going to make the noise 2D, So it's just like the image. It's a 2D noise. And honestly, even this basic noise should actually work pretty well. So we have our global scale X and Y. X is the first one, and we want that to be nice and long, stretched out. Even that doesn't seem that long, so let's make it 5,000. I'm going to crank up the contrast a lot. And we will just right now multiply it. So that's multiplying on our other texture, which means we should start seeing it kind of get darker in certain areas. We also have to play with the scale overall. I'm going to set that down to half the amount. Actually, I guess we can get quite tiny with that. 25. Okay, now as I get to 25, you see we're starting to see a little bit more of that. And I can actually start pulling up the low clip, and it's going to get darker and darker and darker overall, to the point where we're going to start seeing just little stripes of our normal color. So that's working pretty well so far. Let's see. We got a reflectance. We have a specular. We don't want that. I'm actually going to pop open Greyscalegorilla's top coat so we can do our reflectance really quickly. And I'm just going to click lacquer. Done. It killed off specular and replaced it with lacquer. Done. Hit render. And now you see we get that little hint of reflection from these other parts, which is exactly what I wanted. It's like that extra layer on top of it. Reopen. Looks like our live stream crashed. Oh my. Close. Open. Start streaming. Sorry. Hopefully that's streaming again. Okay, that seems to be back. There might be a commercial going, but sorry. We're gonna carry on, troops. Yeah, we got all these stripes now, and I actually like it being darker. But now we have so much low clip that I'm gonna pull back on that, so it's a little bit more varied. The extra contrast is nice. I guess it's just a balance between those two. I might even want to layer, like, have this one be nice and stripy, and then have a second one with a different random seed, and have this one be like 100, be nice and big, and then have more black on top of that. And now that can also multiply. But even that, now we can multiply, but have that set to 75. So now it's making it darker, but not everywhere all the time. So, easy on the contrast there. Yeah, that's something. That's something. So many different things to tinker around with this. So that's one thing. Now, right now, you see we get actually quite a few. We can see our polygons quite a bit, so I'd probably want to go into my subdivision surface and increase that by 1. Now it's going to look a lot smoother there. That's going to go a long way, especially with these reflections. Those matter. So now we're kind of getting those cool stripes. If we go back outside the elephant, we can actually start tiling even more with more color if we actually shrink it down. Go back inside, and you can see we have a lot more stripes. And because we made our 2D noise, or we made our noise a 2D texture, that also scaled down with us. So you see, this is how we get a lot more stripes. And now if we were to go back into that noise, we can make this overall scale a lot bigger, and then that can be a little bit more uniform. I guess I shrank it so small that would be a little tough to shrink down. I think even if I make that big number, it's going to just become. Let's try different seeds. Yeah, that's not pushing too far. Well, and you see this larger dark area, so it's getting quite large actually. Lots of contrast. Yeah, tough call on that one. But now you see we're getting all these really nice stripes, okay? So now what do we do? Well, now if we want to start getting that motion, which of course is one of the cool parts here, is we are going to probably use signal actually. Because what we want to do is we have an offset U and we have an offset V. So now look, if I grab... You're seeing that blur pretty well. Let me hit render and see if that shows up as clearly. Okay, that's just in the preview. It's not actually going to be that much. So anyway, we have this parameter offset U, and as I drag that, you're seeing we're getting this really cool motion. Now something that's really cool is once we go from 0 to 100, it would actually be a perfect tile, I think. Yeah, so that would be a perfect loop, so we don't actually have to do that once. But we can also offset our V, and we actually have it moving in 2 different directions in 2 different ways. We're going to do that via signal, so I'm going to right-click and add signal, because if you want to tile things, signal is the thing to do. So I'm going to drag in offset U into signal, and I want this to go from 0 to 100%. I'm going to select all my points, right-click, and say be linear. I don't actually think I have to select them to do that. I'm not sure. But those are going to be linear. And right now it's going to go from 0 to 90, and it's going to happen one time, which is fine. But we're probably going to want to go faster. So I'm going to set it to additive. And now all I have to do is change my time, and it'll go faster and faster and faster and always perfectly loop. So we got that. And now that's working well. So I'm going to, well, it should be working well. Let's hit play and make sure. Okay, cool. So you see it is moving. And now I'm going to duplicate that tag, and I'm going to drag in offset V instead. So this, I should probably do that while I'm not playing. So let's grab, oh, it is working. Okay, it is offset V. You can see right there the parameter's name, offset V. And that one I do want to move, but I want to move slower. And we are set to additive, which means I can actually drop this number down to like 20. So that means it's going to move at a fifth of the speed the other one is. So if I hit play, then we're going to see that moving mostly left to right, but also it's slowly moving downward. So that's kind of cool. So now let's go back into our camera and see what we're actually seeing here. Now look at that. That is awesome. It's infinitely tileable. If we actually rendered this out a particular set of frames, that would actually, it would actually tile forever. And like, this isn't even rendered, and that already looks cool. Look at that. It's super psychedelic. This is working exactly the way I was hoping it would. I like it moving down, but I want to see a little bit more motion left and right. So I'm actually going to speed that up. So I'm going to make it go twice as fast. So now, maybe you're getting like a little bit of a time-lapse highway vibe as it spins around. So that's pretty cool. We could also move it heavy. I'm going to tell it to maybe not move it all up and down. So this is now not moving up and down at all. We just get the highway streaks. I almost feel like that little bit of motion goes a long way. Like this moving down is anchoring your eye, where without that motion, it almost just becomes noise. It's streaking around very quickly, but it's almost just noise. But as we, as this starts moving a little bit, let's see if let's try moving faster. So it's 55. Let's move 100. So now it's actually moving down quite a bit down those tunnels and moving along these stripes. So that's actually looking pretty cool too. So I really like the vibe there. And let's keep in mind that the reflection is still there. So I can hit render, and when we actually render, we're going to get these additional reflective vibes. And this really starts feeling like we get these streaks of neon. It has this luminant quality. Like these darker areas are nice and quite dark. But then like this green is quite vibrant. So that actually pops out quite a bit. And other things to keep in mind is we actually have, this is all still set up here where we can do additional things like throw in a hue saturation. So we can I can go in here and crank up our saturation all the way. It's probably going to be a little bit ugly, but by cranking up the saturation, we're going to get like neon going. Like that particular stripe doesn't look too good, but a lot of the other ones look pretty good. So pulling that up maybe a little bit, not too bad. We can also grab the hue, and I can shift this hue over, and we can start getting different colors. So that's neat. Like, so I like that. In fact, I'm going to leave that. Maybe that with a little extra saturation is looking pretty sweet. Holy cow, that's awesome. So you take that, and that's looking great. And now we can grab the camera. So we already used signal, so why don't we try doing it with keyframes a little bit, even though I love using signal. Let's make a tiny camera move. So let's say, let's make the animation 180 frames long, and let's pull our camera back. Actually, let's do that. So here's our initial camera state. I'm going to grab our position and our rotation. I'm going to click and it'll automatically keyframe those. I think in our 16, maybe it was our 17 they did that, or otherwise you have to control or command hold. Fast forward all the way. Where do I want my new position and rotation to be? I want my new position and rotation to be here. Yeah, like that. And click and record again. I can rewind. Now, one of the problems by doing that default recording is we don't have very good control of our F-curves. It's going to start out slow and end slow. It's kind of doing an automatic ease in and ease out. But let's see what that gives us. What's crazy is that we have so much motion. There's so much other things going on. You don't even feel the camera moving, which is interesting. It's not until it pops back to the beginning that we actually feel like, oh, wait, we moved, which is kind of crazy. That's pretty sexy, though, I gotta say. And keep in mind, okay, so yes, we are in the inside of an elephant, and it's just kind of a weird piece of geometry, but I feel like we could do a lot more extrudes and pillars and, okay, we're going to deform our elephant a little bit. Sorry, little pachyderm, but I'm going to de-link from our camera, and let's go inside here. Actually, I guess the camera's recorded, so we can go in here. I'm going to, let's see, where do we go? Okay, that's a good position. So if we go to our elephant's body, and we grab, zoom out, and I'm going to grab that polygon, go to select, and turn off axis. Grab that polygon and that polygon. And I'm going to hit B. The letter B is a shortcut for bridge. And I'm going to grab this corner and connect it to that corner. So do that. Bink, and those get linked together, and we get this automatic little pillar bridge connecting one to the other. That's automatically extra geometry because it's a flat frontal projection. We automatically have it get mapped, and that should automatically give us a nice little bit of extra depth in here. The elephant's going to look a little weird on the outside, but now we've got that extra bit of geometry. And like, oh my God, there's so many things here. Like, we like these rotations, like we haven't even touched it, but we could like look at our rotations change. Like if I change, and right, that's not even animating. This is just changing our position, our rotation P. So we could say like, okay, here's the stripes. This is so weird that the camera's not moving, but like, okay, here's the stripes facing that direction. Like, look at that, feels completely different. Wow, I can't believe how different that feels. And then we can, wow, this is epileptic warning on this one, guys. You know, we can have, the point being is we can angle this in any orientation we want. Like that one seems pretty cool. Like look at that. Now that one looks like it's traveling up and then it seems to be traveling back down again. Like that's super weird and trippy. And then that's not even counting hitting render, and then we get these awesome additional stripes, and kind of more depth going on. So yeah, all that, man, that's super cool. It's also rendering reasonably quickly. If I go to our render settings, it'd be a good idea to throw in some physical renderer, but you know, this is pretty simple. So let's just go here. I'm gonna go to options. I'm gonna say reflection depth 1, which means it only reflects one time. That way it's not reflecting from there and it bouncing off there and it bouncing off there. One reflection should be enough. It's pretty subtle. So that should make that render a little faster. And I'm going to output, let's not save, this resolution's low, but it's fine. I'm going to say all frames. It's not, we didn't set this up to tile, but keep in mind how easy it would be to tile it to make it a looping animation. Let's see if this is, actually I'm going to make this a little bit wider. Let's say 10 across. Yeah, so now it's a little bit more framed, framed the way it actually be. So let's take this is what it looks like in the viewport. Whoa. And now let's set it to picture viewer, which I think will render incredibly quickly. Did I say all frames? I did. Stripe. This is turning out perfect, guys. I didn't know if it would work this well. Let's see what this is doing. Yeah, quite quick. That's rendering pretty smooth. Actually, you see those kind of bad chunks we're seeing there? I feel like that might once again just be our subdivision surface, so I'm going to increase it to, let's try 4x4, and I'm just going to send it to the picture viewer again, and I want to see if that chunky looking, see how this is like really stretching and looking ugly. I want to see if that on frame 2, look at that, look how much smoother it is now. So that is just straight up our geometry. So you just have to make sure our geometry is subdivided enough where it can handle it. It's still rendering incredibly quickly. Yeah, it's kind of shockingly nice looking. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I can think of more. I can think of so many ways of adding additional layers on top of this. Like it's insane how much we could potentially do with it. It really never ends. This is probably going to be a dead end. I feel like simplicity is the way to go. But this is so far subdivided that I wonder if we go into our displacement and we just add in a noise. And I'm actually going to set the noise to world, which should stop it from moving around with the offset, although I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm also going to make it relatively large, and let's hit render and see what that does. Okay, now you see we're getting all these little distortion, warbly things happening, which is fine. Like, actually, that's kind of cool. Like, this pillar is no longer just a straightforward pillar. We get these nice big warbles going on in it. And we can make that smaller since obviously the scale was a reasonable size. And now we should get more kind of specific bumps going. So we get more of these lumpy, bumpy things going on. So like all that, like that's cool looking. It's different and neat looking. Like I said, I think simplicity is the way to go. My general, I don't know a lot about design. I don't know a lot about design, but my general philosophy on things is if you add something and then you look at it, you're like, it's cool. Like, do I like it better though? If you add something and you don't like it better, then it's better to not add it. Like just adding on more and more layers is just complexity. Complexity isn't inherently appealing. So if I like these lumps better, then it's good to add them. But if it's like, well, I kind of like it the same amount, you should get rid of it. That's my rule anyway. I did like it, but I liked it at 200. But before we do that, let's try changing it to a more complex noise. See what that does. Let's do a more complex noise at a larger scale. So this is actually going to start getting a little bit nitty-gritty, and I would expect to get more of these more geode-looking things. But then from there, I would maybe turn on a sub-poly displacement. Only do it maybe 2. Turn on round geometry. Now it's going to sub-poly displace this at render time. Obviously, doing 2 more subdivisions is quite a bit. This is actually going to start running quite slow. Just want to see if it looks good at all. At a glance, I'm not liking it. It's interesting, but I'm not liking it. I'm going to turn off sub-poly displacement. Let's go back into here. Go back to regular noise, which actually did look pretty cool. And then that will displace at render time. And it's only displacing 5. What's interesting is we can crank that up to like 10. And now this should be it's big distortion, but it's happening more. And that, I think I do like that better. Let's keep in mind we could actually animate that noise, so that could actually be changing the geometry of the form as well. But what I wanted to say is we could actually do this in real time by adding our displacer here. I'm actually going to add the displacer after the subdivision surface, so you see it's actually a sibling of it. But that means it's doing our sub-poly, or not sub-poly, where it's doing our displacement after the subdivision, not before it. And we already know this looks good, so I'm going to copy that, get rid of displacement, go into our displacer, paste that in, and we only have to, it's deforming 10, so now we're seeing it in real time. And once again, this is all real, so I can save it, hit play. I guess we're still rendering, so it's going to run slow. But look, we're getting this kind of feedback in the viewport. It's crazy. And that's without it being animated. Let's animate it, because why not? I'm going to set it to 2 just so we see the changes quickly. But like, pay attention, especially to this pillar. When I hit play, it is the physical geometry is now deformed. Oh, look at that. So does that add to it? I don't know. We'd have to see it in proper kind of real-time-ish motion to know if that's adding to it. But that is mega trippy. Mega trippy. 2 would definitely be too fast. I'd probably go with like 0.5. Because once you're playing at real speed, it's going to be quicker than you expect it to be. Let's see how our render's doing. Play. Whoa. Wow, that is really cool. So, and like a big difference that we have going on that is different from the reference is that we are moving the stripes along the wall. We're not just traveling it. We're also moving them along, which I think is the biggest difference here. And I guess for the sake of seeing it, in fact, why don't we drop our resolution to half of its current size so we can render a lot quicker. And I'm going to go to that signal tag that is telling V to offset, and I'm going to tell it not to offset at all. So now let's have that render. So what I want to point out here is now what's happening is like if you think of these lines like highways, like now all of our motion is just coming from those like lines, cars traveling down the highway instead of the highway moving along our surface, which is going to give us a very, very different vibe overall. We're not going to get so many color variations. We will get some, but not as much. And visually, well, here's the thing: is I think visually it's going to be a lot less interesting, but there's going to be like a nice subtlety to it. So let's play here. So yeah, right away. So we do have our displacement moving around, which is fighting what I'm talking about a little bit. But now you feel this highway kind of travel happening a lot more. Look at these guys like going, like it feels like those are moving really fast. And I kind of do like that combination because we get this vibe of fast motion, but then you also get this overall kind of slow motion happening. And if we turn off our displacer, which should really kind of, it's going back to our simple thing, but now we should really kind of get that highway vibe. And let me point out that we would be getting a lot more kind of distinct vibe from that. The more color, if we go back to Photoshop, you see we actually do have a decent amount of variation going left to right. Like, so this goes from orange and it's very detailed to this big blue and then to white to these other things. And I actually think that's the big difference between what I'm doing here and what Nick did. In Nick's version, he took a very, very, very small sliver. Like, let's say we took that and we stretch it way out. We get this uniform stripe going across. So we can't travel along the highway. But my bigger point is that we've got this image, and the more variation we add to this overall image, like left to right, the more you'll kind of feel that motion traveling along the highway. So if we were to say, I don't know, let's keep it simple. And I don't think we're going to keep this. But if I were to take this entire image, duplicate it, I'm going to flip it upside down and now overlay it by itself, then we're getting more variation. You see, we're traveling through more kind of layers of detail. And I could actually select it, go to filter, offset, and offset that again. Actually, I guess we have to do that by a different number. If I go to offset and do it by some other variant number, you see we're getting more kind of different colors. And it all just depends on how many times we want to tile that. In fact, we could even do that. We could take this image, and because it is infinitely tileable, I could actually take this, scale it over, hit Command or Control J to duplicate it, and I can now drag that over, link that, stretch it here. And if this is also set to overlay, those should perfectly match each other. See that perfectly match? I guess I didn't link them. Oh, it does work. It's just Photoshop's giving that line. Those actually linked perfectly, and now I've added more detail. So now you see that there's more of these like little tiny stripes traveling across. And that will, as we're zooming across the landscape, that will have more of an effect. So why don't we even go ahead and name that stripe 2. And I'll just save it as a JPEG. Go back to Cinema, and let's check out what this render is doing. I'm going to tell it to stop rendering, actually, because that's gone far enough. And now let's look at, actually, so we've done that. Let's start the new one rendering right away. So I'm going to just quickly go into Luminance, go find our image. I'm going to change it to stripe 2. That automatically updated. I'm not going to change anything else. That's all I'm changing is the image. Let's go ahead and tell that to start rendering. And right away you see there's more contrast because I kept overlaying, but that's fine. And let's look at this one. So hit play, and whoa. So I was going to say, it feels like it's growing, but that's our camera moving forward. But now you see how we feel like we're getting this kind of highway travel going, like, it is my prediction that when we have this one has a few more frames, we're going to feel about double as much motion traveling left and right. And by left and right, of course, I mean kind of across the highway, if that metaphor is working for you at all. Kind of wish I hadn't had the camera move because that's fighting this motion a little bit. But yeah, okay, right away and hit play, you see, like, look how much more motion there is. We didn't actually change the animation speed or anything. We just changed the image we're feeding it, and there's so much more detail that now we're feeling that detail as it travels across this inside of an elephant landscape. In fact, I'm kind of curious to see what happened to the poor elephant with that hole we put through him. So if we go to the outside of the elephant and yank out this material. Oh, dear. Oh, geez. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Elephant. That's what we did to him. Oh, man. I mean, he looks like he's cool with it. Back inside. Oh, man, I didn't even do that. Later, the displacement, that he's super crazy. Look at his poor eyeballs. Yeah. So anyway, the point being, like, now that we have more detail, look at how much faster that feels like it's moving as compared to, I want to make sure I grab the right one, as compared to this one. Exact same everything, except for that image change. And look, like, there's a nice amount of motion here, but like, if there's a subtlety to it. We jump onto this one, and look how much faster it feels. So like, and it's super duper important detail. And if we hadn't made it tileable, then every once in a while we'd suddenly see this very distinct stripe travel across the entire thing, and I don't think we'd actually want that. I like that quite a bit. I think that I like this one maybe a little bit more, the subtlety there. So I'm going to jump back to this just being the regular stripe, but I did want to mention that. And I want to add in this motion back in again, because I do like that. It just, it made it harder to talk about. And let's put the material back on. Yeah, man, I can reap all the Reddit karma by making some looping GIFs out of this thing. I gotta mention the noise, the parametric noise I put on top of it. That actually might break the tiling, so you might have to actually turn that off. Also, let's just for the sake of seeing what it does, let's kill that noise off. And this is if we didn't add all that darkness in. Let's hit render. It's cool looking. I like that. I don't like it better, but you see, like having that darkness kind of makes everything a little bit more subtle. It makes the lines that are there pop out. So by having these two multiplied noises in there, it's making us appreciate the lines that we do see more. And if we want to take this to the extreme, let's make one more of these. Let's say multiply, and we're going to go super extreme on this one. Heavy contrast and barely any stripes. And I guess actually we will have it be a little transparent. We'll let everything else hint through, but just barely. So now we've got this very high contrast, and now only a couple of these lines will show up. And like that moving around will look significantly different as well. So I don't know. I don't have an answer here. This is just playing around. I think that's a good place to end that one. I think we achieved our goal, and all we've done is like unlock like so much potential. Like I want to see what the inside of the elephant's ear looks like. Where's the entrance to his ear? It's hard to tell with all these stripes. Elephant, where's your ear? What are we looking at here? There's a foot. There it is. There's an ear hole. It's not as interesting looking as I was hoping it would be. But if we put the stripe on it, like we get this crazy canyon. And if we hit play, like that's pretty psychedelic. So like just within, like it is absurd, but just within this elephant, like there's like an infinite number of like positions and locations and rotations and zooms and heck, just look at this overall elephant. Look at that. I didn't think about it, but the overall elephant, like if we made this properly tiling, this whole guy looks pretty cool. And we could probably get some nice looking camera angles like via the exterior of the elephant. Whoa. Okay, that's pretty neat. Like if you were to render that out and say, okay, what animal is it? I wouldn't be able to tell you, and especially because of the hole in his head. Okay, well, like literally this will never end, and I will just keep talking and talking and talking. So we're just going to call that success right there. Thanks so much for the question. I actually did want to tackle that one, because when Nick did it, I was like, I have a slightly different idea, and I think it would work really well for tiling. So, yeah, super duper happy with that. Okay, thanks everybody, and I'll catch you again in another SGSG. Bye-bye. I'm still here, everybody.